Well, hi, I'm Shane Nelson, Bruce Shane Nelson, also known as Lucky. I'm the original inventor of the ring train, and you've seen the project which I have up on Indiegogo. So far, we've only had a $10 donation, but rather than being discouraged, I'm very encouraged by that. One person has seen where this is headed. Historically, I had a dream. I saw a train going through hoops. And at the time I was a high school student, I thought it was just a dream. I read a lot of science fiction in those days, so I didn't give it much thought. But when my son was born, when I was about 60, for some reason that project or that idea came back in my mind, and I began to examine whether or not it was a possibility or if it was just a dream. And in fact, the more I looked at it, the simpler the design got. At first I looked at maglev and using air systems and so on in the rings to propel the train, but those were very expensive and very difficult technologies. And finally it turned out that nothing was easier than wheels. It's like 19th century mechanics, nothing super modern about it. The big change in the ring train is that we put the wheels off the train. They're in the rings. And this changes everything because this creates a featherweight train. You take the motors off, you take all that stuff off. For example, a TGV weighs 128 tons. We're down to really a 20th century system, not a 21st century system. If you're an auto mechanic, you can maintain the ring train towers. Compare that with the TGV and maglev and things like that. And speaking of TGV and maglev, let's get on to price. Another revolutionary aspect of the ring train is the price of setting it up, building it and setting it up. It literally costs nothing compared to TGV, high-speed trains, and of course maglev. They tried to build maglev between Hanover and Berlin back in the 90s or 80s. They had to give up after 100 kilometers. It just cost too much. And a high-speed train costs from 20 to 50 million dollars a kilometer or a mile, I forget. But it works out to about $1 billion every 20 miles. So these can only be used, these existing fast trains can only be used on very prosperous routes, you know, like Paris-Lyon or San Francisco, Los Angeles, and so on. And they can't be put all over the country. And this is a huge breakthrough with the ring train, is it can go anywhere. It's so cheap to set up. And the other aspect, which perhaps hasn't come clear in the original presentation, it's so fast to set up. We're looking at a possibility of setting up a ring train system from coast to coast, hitting 65 major cities. We could set that up in 9 months. Yeah, not 20 years, 10 years, 9 months. Because the towers are just really trucks mounted on poles. And because of the use of lightweight materials in the featherweight train, they don't have to be very strong, these towers. There's a lot of them, and they're very unobtrusive. They make a minimum impact on the soil. But you're looking at the potential of setting up a high-speed rail system in the United States, coast to coast, every major city and a lot of minor cities in 9 months. And that's why I think this project is important. The train. But Adam had the idea of every seat a recliner. Now, if we're talking about using the ring train for urban transport in an area like Paris or New York and so on, this is a revolutionary idea, not just a new idea. This is a total revolution in what transport means to people. Now imagine, on the ring train, you get on, there's a recliner. In fact, before you get on, you're in a recliner. When the station is just a train which doesn't go anywhere. So there's hundreds of recliners. So while you're waiting for your train, you're in a recliner. When your train arrives, you get on the train, you're in a recliner again, which means imagine going to work virtually lying down, coming home every day, lying down, relaxing, instead of being jammed in with people the way they are in public transport. We can't get people to take public transport. Why? Well, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. They're just too packed in. But since the idea of the featherweight train is to make it light, you want people spread out. So you create a very long, cheap train and people spread out. And of course, that means you've got unlimited room and no more crowding in the ring train. Between 5 and 15 meters, where there's nothing right now. A few buildings reach up that high, some bridge towers, abutments, but other than that, we have this space from 5 to 15 meters where there's nothing. So there's no danger of collisions, there's no problem with intersections with any existing traffic and so on, and the ring train goes up into this totally empty space which has not been utilized very much. In New York and Chicago you have elevated, and Paris to some extent, you have elevated trains which run up into that area, but they're heavyweight trains, so as a result on the ground it's a mess. You're in a tunnel of iron lattice work and things like that. So the difference, total difference here with the ring train, which is in the same space as the elevated cars in Chicago and New York, but which is virtually invisible, and the infrastructure, the towers, are almost invisible. And again, as I say, excuse me for repeating myself, they can be set up overnight. It's no more complicated setting up these towers than setting up big street lamps. You can use the same tools. It's all off-the-shelf technology. You can put up a crew of 8 can put up a mile or 2 a day of ring train. So you hire enough people, you can cover the country in in about 9 months. Now, if you understand that high-speed rail, French style and German style and so on, is the enemy of the environment. It's unbelievably noisy, it's unbelievably space-taking, encumbering, it just, I remember standing on a platform having a TGV go by. It's a hellish experience, it's so loud, noisy and so on. Whereas we're talking about a virtually silent transport system. So that area, very important. It's empty. There's nothing up there now. And there's room to put in an absolutely wonderful transport system. Excuse me. And the ring train is designed for that space. It's supposed to live up there. Weather can't stop it. Accidents can't happen. That's the ring train concept. But we haven't touched on the most important aspect of the ring train, and that is pollution. Now the big question and the big important thing, most important thing concerning the ring train is pollution. Compared to any form of transportation, it is the lowest polluting, least polluting, cleanest transport ever designed. And think how important that is. Today, a child in Chicago has 22 more cloudy days than I had when I was a kid in Chicago. Think of that. A month of sunshine gone. Why? Air transport. The air transport industry is so powerful that they've managed to get the public's mind off of the damage they're doing. Did you ever hear of something like the ozone layer? Do you know that the use of jets contributes to that problem and so on? Now, when they put the TGV, or fast rail service, between Paris and Lyon, which is about, 400 miles, at that point, the air traffic between the two cities decreased 90%. So make no mistake, the ring train concept is an enemy, the antithesis of air transport, and it will be opposed tremendously by the existing companies, transport companies, and treated as a idiocy or even as a danger. All right, but we're talking about using 1/10 the fuel per passenger to move the passenger around. We're talking about a quiet, really silent way of moving people through space rather than a disturbing, noisy way. A ring train going by a block away with 700 people on board is going to make less noise in your living room than a 747 going over at 20,000 feet full of people. This is really the most revolutionary aspect of the ring train, besides comfort, besides safety, and that is that it's going to reduce pollution tremendously. And pollution is a major problem across the planet. And let me emphasize, the ring train is a effective, important, easy, affordable solution to all the pollution now being generated by air traffic. And finally, let's talk about safety. This is a plane that can't crash. It's also more or less terrorist proof, so when you ride the ring train, you'll be liberated from all those controls at the airport and all that nonsense of taking off your clothes and getting filled up and so on. So in this sense, it's also revolutionary. It's very hard to sabotage the ring train. You have to sabotage simultaneously several towers and so on. Not very easy at all, and nowhere near as dangerous as blowing up a plane and so on. So it's a much safer, much safer way of traveling, which also is important. And you can lie down you'll be able to lie down coast to coast or lie down here. And that's your perk, that if we get this thing going, or we will get it going eventually, so the sooner we get it going, the sooner you're going to breathe clean air, and your children are going to breathe clean air, and the damage to the ozone layer is going to be diminished as air traffic decreases. This is all possible with this design. That's why we need more than $10 donations or contributions. All right. But even a €5 contribution to this project, it will pay off. Your perk will be cleaner air in your city and cleaner air in your country, and quieter.